The world is in turmoil. Also, the post-corona era will be full of challenges, old and new. How do we safeguard the future of next generations? We believe the answer lies in resilience. For that, we treat you to knowledge and inspiration towards a resilient society.
(1842), Dies Natalis. Let's celebrate!
A resilient society is, by definition, a society that is able to sustain its functions and prosper, even in the face of adversity.
Adapt to new situations in which we can deal with threats, and a society in which no one is left behind, trying to avoid huge inequalities.
Now, importantly, because of the many challenges we are facing, but it means that you are able to respond to anything that may happen, but also to learn from shocks and disruptions like the COVID crisis and to adapt.
In order to make our society more resilient, the first challenge that we need to address is to identify the critical infrastructures that we have in our society. We need to address all the vulnerabilities that we have in these different infrastructures.
I mean, it's no big secret. We face an environmental crisis that is accelerating. We face crises in our political systems.
Artificial intelligence gives me the opportunity to build electronic partners, be it robots, avatars, or other kind of software agents that help me in my struggles to overcome the obstacles that I face.
It was a very tough year, sure, but it also showed me how important the social relations are and how we are actually able to do it together. The solidarity that I felt this year was incredible, so that inspires me.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our Dies Natalis 2021. Welcome colleagues, students, alumni and all those who care about TU Delft. What a difference a year makes. This year, no procession of professors, no filled auditorium, but as you can see behind me, an almost empty campus. A site that symbolizes the crisis that started early last year. A year on and the pandemic is far from over. I am more hopeful though. Now the rollout of vaccination is underway. But I am also worried about the effects of prolonged online education on students and on staff, and about all the stress a renewed lockdown is bringing. 2020 has been a very tough year for all of us in many ways. Yet, looking back, it seems to me that we coped quite well under these circumstances. One way or another, we continued our education, our research and most other activities. It was hardly ideal and far from easy. And we all have our own story to tell about 2020, about how we juggled our responsibilities at home and at work, how we worried about our loved ones, and how we tried to stay focused and motivated through it all. A number of these stories we have collected in our annual portraits, this year dedicated to our university in times of Corona. You can read them online on our story platform. And if there is one thing the heroes of these stories have in common, it is the resilience they show. They do not fall apart under stress, but carry on despite everything and adapt to the new situation. They manage to make a virtue out of necessity. They steer their research in new directions or speed up the introduction of robot manufacturing in education. They see the positive side of things. For example, that forced online education now lowers the threshold for blended education later on. All the while, they show remarkable modesty. This is what we do, they say, and this is just us, engineers being ingenious. And we were glad to be able to help. In fact, they should be proud of themselves. And so should you. Because these tales are about all of us. And they were written to honor your impressive achievements in the past year. So on balance, many good things happened, even in such a bad year. Resilience, then, is a great characteristic to possess in times of crisis. Not just the current crisis, but also all of the crises that have seemingly taken a back seat, but are still out there. Ongoing global challenges like healthcare and climate change issues, and dwindling natural resources and threats to the world's ecosystems. To weather them, societies with all their interlocking systems must become much more resilient. What do we mean by that? A resilient system or community or society has to be able to withstand and recover from unexpected events like natural disasters, cyber attacks or economic crises. Moreover, it should not just bounce back, it should also be able to learn from the crisis and to adapt. So how resilient did we prove ourselves to be in the Netherlands during the corona crisis? We all know the story. Our healthcare system was in danger of becoming overwhelmed. And to stop this from happening, life as we knew it ground to a halt. The effects of COVID-19 rippled through our healthcare system, our politics, our social circles, the economy, transport and distribution systems, and so on. It showed the unexpected ways in which all these systems are interconnected. How can we, as a university, a country, a global community, be better prepared for the next foreseen or indeed unforeseen disasters? How can we safeguard next generations? How can technology help us in this? And how can we design this technology in a way that is ethical and fair, so it does not infringe our rights or increase social inequality? The current situation highlights the urgency, but these are not new questions. A lot of thinking has already gone into these matters at TU Delft and at our fellow universities. That is why this week we treated you to a wealth of insights in resilience, with showcases, talks, videos and a daily radio broadcast by BNR. Society needs resilience and resilience needs technology. That is the central message of it all. Today we conclude with this live event. Now let me take you back to last year's Dies Natalis celebration, where we announced our plans for increased collaboration with our academic partners, the Erasmus University, the Erasmus Medical Center, Leiden University and the Leiden University Medical Center. It is our strong belief that we must merge our knowledge of the technical, medical and natural sciences with the social sciences and the humanities in order to find integrated solutions to major societal challenges. This merging of disciplines is called convergence. The corona crisis has only reinforced the importance of this. Fighting the pandemic requires not just medical knowledge, but also insights from economics, behavioral sciences and ethics. Just like resilience, it requires a holistic approach. So what has happened in the past year? Within our partnership, researchers have been working in an integrated manner on 3 focus areas. Let me give you a quick recap for all 3 of them. The first theme, resilient delta. Here we are looking at the city, the future of the port and the delta in general. Last year, researchers from the Erasmus University, TU Delft and the Erasmus Medical Center joined forces with the national program Rotterdam South. They work on issues related to urban inequality, such as health, debt and housing. Together with social scientists, we look at this from new perspectives. For example, how to design neighborhoods so it increases opportunities. The ultimate aim is to achieve broad prosperity in the region. When you look at the future of the port, the energy transition means great chances for port management, for the chemical industry and for the city and its people. We are working with Erasmus University on the relationship between port and city, in addition to existing initiatives like Smart Port. Rotterdam and deltas around the world also have to be resilient in the face of crises like rising sea levels. Climate action is already a priority at TU Delft, and this offers new possibilities. For example, we are working on new demonstrators for climate monitoring, and we are exploring the links between climate and the spread of mosquito-borne diseases. The second theme, artificial intelligence, data and digitalization. TU Delft has a strong presence in the domain of AI. Nature, the leading science journal, ranks TU Delft in its top 100 of AI research organizations as the only Dutch university. Together with Leiden University, Erasmus University and both medical centers, this can grow even stronger. Last year, we formed the AI Hub South Holland with more than 1,200 AI researchers. We will considerably expand our AI courses and minors in the next 2 years, so all 85,000 students in our region will be able to take part in specific AI courses. A number of these courses will be accessible for alumni as well. In a joint research agenda with industry and regional partners, we target 5 themes: energy and sustainability, health and care, port and maritime, peace, justice and security, and technological industry. Convergence offers us new directions, so as the opportunity to include economic models into our digital simulation of factories and production processes. Supported by the National Growth Fund and the National AI Coalition, we will see new projects this year. For example, on subjects like AI for law and justice, or a 24/7 AI-controlled renewable energy network. An important aspect is the connection of research in AI and research with AI. Over the course of this year, we will have established 24 new Delft AI labs for the cross-fertilization between AI experts and scientists who use AI in their research. Some have already started, like Machina, where machine learning is used to advance new materials. Or iDoor Lab, where AI is used to tackle water problems in the urban environment. In all of these activities, we take a human-centered, responsible and ethical approach to make sure that complex systems will benefit people and society. Third theme, health and technology. This is where our convergence activities originally started, even before we put a name to them. As ever, there is great enthusiasm, and ideas for collaborations are coming from all sides. At the first open meeting for interested researchers this year, no less than 500 people showed up. We have built a convergence ecosystem, a community of 30,000 students, researchers, clinicians and entrepreneurs who work together on research, education and economic impact. To name a few initiatives, there is Healthy Start, focusing on the years from conception up to adolescence. In Consultation Room 2030, we use a research by design approach to develop the consultation room of the future. All in all, we want to start up at least 10 new flagships with a budget of 5 million or more over the next 5 years. This year, we are setting up conversion squares where people can meet up and work together online. We will also increase the number of health and care-related startups on our campus and contribute to the new national MedTech program. Now, where do we go from here? For many of us, the crisis has been a wake-up call that showed us the things that really matter. We have also seen that if we have to, we can quickly adapt to new situations and learn to live our lives differently. And if we all act together, we can make a change. So if and when this is over, let us not just bounce back to how things were before, but let us use this crisis as a springboard for the future, for a new future. A future where we no longer put short-term economic gain over long-term public health and sustainable development. Together, we can make this happen. If the past year has shown us one thing, it is that we are on the right track with our holistic approach, incorporating all areas of learning. We have also seen it during this week of resilience. Success lies in the merging of different perspectives in a way that goes far beyond a multidisciplinary approach. We need to do this systematically and on a large scale. Big questions need big science. And convergence is our way of achieving that. In fact, it's our responsibility as a university, as academics, as engineers. However, the success of a lot of what we do, including our convergence initiatives, also depends on physical proximity. By being able to meet up and to exchange ideas. We have worked hard to transform our own campus into an innovative ecosystem with some 245 businesses at the last count and the research infrastructure including numerous living labs. New joint research labs and meeting spaces are being created as we speak. That is why it saddens me to look behind me at the emptiness. Just like you, I can't wait to see our campus come to life again. And I hope to welcome you back soon. Thank you very much.
Yes, and while Tim joins us here at the table, coming from the cold outside here inside, I too would like to welcome you. My name is Art Royakkers. I'm a TV host and radio interviewer here in the Netherlands. And it's a privilege to be your co-host today together with Tim, even though my dad kind of disagrees. He spent his working life at the Technical University in Eindhoven, so he's pretty jealous that I'm here in Delft today, the oldest technical university of our country, of course. But I think it's great that a university is taking this responsibility and making resilient society the theme of its week-long birthday celebrations. Hello, Tim. Are you cold or not?
It's a bit chilly out there. Yeah, really.
It was, yeah.
But I managed.
Yeah. I myself was on BNR Radio this week, where our show, The Big Five, was all about technological resilience. You can hear the podcast in the BNR app, because it was, well, pretty parallel to what you guys are doing here this week. These were fascinating conversations about how technology can contribute to resilience. And this is an issue close to my heart. I wrote this book, De Eeuw van mijn dochters, The Century of My Daughters, and I tried to talk to scientists about the century that lies ahead, also scientists of your university, Bart van Arem, for instance.
Great guy.
Yeah, and Joris Melkert, about simple questions. Do my daughters need their driving license? Because we get all these self-driving cars, for example.
What was their answer?
Yes, actually, yes.
Okay.
Well, basically, probably in the future we'll need 2 driving licenses. So I better start saving up money, they told me. Because the car itself also needs a driving license.
I see, yeah.
But anyway, treating people to knowledge, that's what you guys are doing here, and I find that a beautiful thought. This is a message of hope and looking ahead, and that's something we can use in these times, I guess. Welcome here, Tim.
Thank you very much, Art.
Official robe, because the protocol requires you to wear the beret and the robe and everything. So good to see you. We talked a bit, this is your 36th DS Natalis here.
Yes, it's my 36th year working as an employee at this university. So a great place to be.
Yeah.
I enjoy it very much.
Yeah,
indeed.
and your 4th year as well.
As a rector magnificus, that's
exactly,
right.
Exactly, yeah. This is a once-in-a-lifetime DS Natalis, I guess.
Yes, from one side it's very sad, of course, to see this and everybody at home and so on. But the other side, if we look back at what happened and how we coped with this tragedy over the last year, I'm positive about the future.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
And how hopeful are you about, because you talked about resilience, this is the theme, of course, of this week. How hopeful are you about a resilient society?
Well, in fact, I feel privileged to work in a community, to be part of a community that has an hands-on spirit, a can-do spirit. So if we look back, people shifted their research almost immediately to be able to answer questions that were related to the COVID disease. So looking at that, I have full confidence that we will not only bounce back, but we will use this really as a step to make things much better, as a boost. For instance, the balance of online and on-campus education really has gotten a boost. So I'm quite confident and positive.
Yeah, this will be a turning point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If we do it right, it will be a turning point for the better.
Yeah. And how do you see resilience in relation to the next generation? Because how many students do you have here in Delft?
27,000
27
at the moment.
So
So
basically
it's increasing every year.
Yeah, 27,000 children of yours in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you look at that generation, how do you see resilience?
I think it's very important to incorporate their voice. It's their future that is at stake. But I'm very confident. If you look at this generation of students, the students that we educate right now, they have resilience in their DNA. They have inclusiveness, collaboration in their veins. Yeah. They really care about a better future.
This is different than the generation of, say, 10 years ago?
I think so, yeah. They were more here to have a nice job, a great salary, a nice car, and so on. So I think it differs, again, for the better. Yeah. So I really strongly believe in this generation. But even more, perhaps also important, is the coming generation of students. Because you cannot start early enough, and perhaps you have time to look at the video where we interviewed Mimi and Rayan. They are in the last year of the Horizon elementary school here in Delft. And in fact, they will be a part of the executive board of the university for one day. In
CEO
June.
of the day,
CEO,
for one day,
for one day. And it's interesting to hear how they see the responsibility of a university.
Okay, let's have a look.
De universiteit helpt mensen om verder te komen en de wereld beter te maken. Want als je het samen doet, dat je er meer... Ik vind dan dat je meer erin steekt dan als je het alleen doet. Want als je het alleen doet, moet je eigenlijk alles in je eentje doen en dan kan je niet echt heel veel vragen stellen. En als je het samen doet wel.
Dat we eigenlijk betere uitvindingen kunnen maken en vaak gaan doorzetten. En eigenlijk bijvoorbeeld, ze hebben iets gemaakt, maar dan het nog even maken, maar dan verbeterd.
Ik vind als je iets uitvindt, dat je het voor iedereen moet doen.
En kijken wat er ook nog fout is en dan nog ook testen. En dan kan je misschien nog ook gelijk alles verbeteren.
Iets bedenken, iets maken, het verbeteren en dan goedkoop maken.
Yeah. So to improve it and then make it cheaper also.
Right on the spot.
Absolutely.
Great,
yeah. So this was about collaboration. Your students also collaborated with the BNR News Radio this week. Huh? They made a podcast.
Yeah, and were you happy with it? Was it okay?
Yeah. Well, I heard several bits of it. So they talked to the guests we had in our show, The Big Five, and they made their own podcast. I think you can see it on your website. So
perhaps it's time for us to take a step back and to give them all the opportunities and they deserve it.
Yeah.
Well, I have full confidence in this new generation.
Okay, it's good that you're hopeful. Then a very different merging now. This is not of scientific disciplines, but of dance and technology. We're going to watch a piece by dancer David Middendorp. He's from The Hague, and well, it's something extraordinary. His father was an engineer, his mother an artist. And if you mix this together, you can see the combination in his work. What he does is this: he mixes dance and technology, video, animation. You will see, basically you will see a projection on the wall and the dancers on the floor participating in that projection. Have you seen it or not? It's fascinating to see. It's absolutely and it's beautiful to see as well. So he describes it himself as a dance in duet with technology. So let's have a look, a piece from the performance Flyland. Beautiful, huh?
Marvelous. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful.
David Middendorp, a piece from the performance Flyland, that was. Then our next guest. She's someone with an impressive international curriculum survey. It's Marietje Schaken. She is a CV, I wanted to say, I'm sorry. It's Marietje Schaken. She's a Dutch internet and privacy expert and former politician. For a decade, she sat in the European Parliament for D66. But last year, she traded the Brussels arena for the US. And there she's a lecturer and director of international policy at the Stanford University Cyber Policy Center. This is a center that focuses on limiting the damage of cyber attacks and reducing the harm from escalating conflict in cyberspace. I guess she had quite a hectic week over there in the US, but still she's with us today, so we're very grateful for that. We may hear about the last news later. First, I would like to give her the floor because we're eager to hear her vision on how important technology is towards a resilient society. Marietje Schaken.
Thank you very much. Resilience Needs Technology was the title that was given to my contribution today as we gather to celebrate the 179th years of the existence of the TU in Delft. So first of all, a very warm congratulations on these cold and also very distant days. Let me start by turning the proposition around, that technology needs resilience, but also to add the question, resilience for whom? The contribution of technology to a better or worse, a more stable or unstable, a functioning or dysfunctioning society has been debated over centuries. And I suggest we aspire to resilience for the public amidst the growing presence of technology, which has come under a new spotlight since two game-changing events have happened. One last January 6th and the other on last December 13th. December 13th, for those of you who need a bit of a refresher, was the day that the SolarWinds hack in the United States was first reported. Vulnerabilities in software and supply chains were used to intrude into US government ministries' systems covertly. Now, this is a very common attack method, but the sophistication in this case was unprecedented. Besides the US Department of Homeland Security, impacted users include NATO, the European Parliament, but also AstraZeneca. And if it had not been for FireEye, a security company in the cyber field, which also became a victim of the SolarWinds intrusion themselves, we might not have known what happened at all. Later, more information was shared by companies like Microsoft, one of the world's main software vendors, reporting that its crown jewels, the source code, was accessed through this hack. Now, the companies providing the developed world with the software to run our most vital processes, if they cannot prevent or keep out these kinds of state-led attacks, and attributions point to Russia once again, we have a significant challenge. And on top of relying on these companies for providing these sort of infrastructural services, we also rely on private companies for risk assessment, analytics, or disclosure of what happened in the case of an attack in the first place. And the kind of transparency that the company FireEye provided, which can actually hurt the corporate bottom line, the company's reputation, or trust in its services is rare. On top of reporting, the company also disclosed its own set of tools to allow for more patching to occur before intelligence agencies or criminals could further exploit the compromised software vulnerabilities. The SolarWinds hack, which is already one of the world's most impactful intrusions, reminds us once more of the extraordinary dependence on private companies in the digital world. And too often that dependence goes without clear chains of responsibility, stress testing, well-prepared tenders, oversight on the part of the public or on the part of democratic officials. Now, when we think of cyber resilience, this term refers to an entity's ability to continuously deliver the intended outcome despite adverse cyber events. And we can see that cyber resilience is hard to guarantee, while blind trust is still put into companies building and defending our digital world. But more importantly, any technological system always sits within a larger ecosystem, within an organization, and ultimately within society at large. And we've seen how even when technological products and services are working exactly as intended, their outcomes can negatively impact the resilience of democracy. So that brings me to last week, January 6th, events that alerted the world, and particularly Americans, to the resilience, or rather fragility, of democracy in the face of technological and political disruption. The long celebrated shiny objects from Silicon Valley turned out to be vectors for destruction. One wake-up call came with the Russian attempts to influence the 2016 elections, and last week with the realization that hate speech does not stay in an online parallel universe, but that it spills into the streets and breaks into the houses of democracy. The COVID pandemic that has us connecting online now did not only lead to an intensified use of technologies, making living rooms into offices, classrooms, and theaters. The pandemic also tests both our societal and digital resilience. Because when people are more uncertain and they work in less protected digital environments, they may help create a larger and more vulnerable attack space, while disinformation finds new paths to people's minds. The information ecosystem that is built by private companies, advertising firms, has worked very well for the intended outcome of matching ads with people's interests based on the data collected and messages micro-targeted. But their unchecked power has had enormous collateral damage on public values and on democracy. It's clear that social media companies are feeling this heat and that they are swiftly moving away from a hands-off to a hands-on approach to content moderation. Over the past week, and you may have heard this debate too, there was a lot of discussion on whether or not President Trump's freedom of expression is impeded by Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as they banned his accounts, whether it was a good or a bad decision. But for me, the fact that private firms have the power to decide whether to take the megaphone away or to hand it over, not only to a president, it's a real issue. Because these companies use that power not only to ban a president, but rather to facilitate hate mongers, violence preachers, conspiracy theorists, and others whose freedom of speech is certainly a crucial right, but may be legitimately restricted when public safety, public health, and democratic resiliency are at stake. And on top of that, social media companies do not provide neutral platforms for speech. They allow for curation, virality, anonymity, and pay for play that all help messages reach wide and far. Now, the weighing between different rights and obligations, the integrity of elections, the protection of public well-being, they are typically the territory of public policy and democratically elected representatives. But no longer, when we've seen so much power slipping out of the public's hands into the private sector, while the matching oversight as well as scientific and public insight in order to assess risk or threats to resilience have lagged behind. And that brings us to the fragility of both technological systems and of democracy, as we can see today. So I would therefore offer that democratic resilience needs to be fortified in light of ongoing digitization, and that instead of leading from the starting point of the latest technology, we put democracy first. And such a democratic resilience agenda cannot stop at our national borders. If we compare it to the scale of private companies taking powerful positions in governing in the digital world, but also as a systems competition pulls democracies into a global geopolitical battle with authoritarian governments that instrumentalize technology for their non-democratic agendas, cooperation and scaling of democratic efforts is key. So to conclude my brief introduction, we see a growing friction between resilience in the context of digital systems and the negative impact on the resilience of democracy. Not only when technology is broken or breached, but also and even particularly when the technology works exactly as is intended. And it is my hope at this TU Delft DS that the expertise of the many engineers that study at your esteemed university can help align democratic and technological resilience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marieke. Thank you for those interesting words. I was wondering, I was talking to Tim before, and he was saying, I'm very hopeful about the next generation. I'm sitting next to an optimist here at the table, correct?
Absolutely.
How about you, if you look at the next generation and the topics you were talking about?
Well, when I look at my students at Stanford, certainly they fill me with energy and optimism. And I think that they are very much aware that they are rising to the job market to take responsibility in society at a most crucial moment. And I first want to acknowledge how difficult the impact of the pandemic has been, first and foremost, for young people. Yeah. I mean, I think if we struggle sometimes, imagine people living in student dorms, away from their family, away from friends, and the kinds of fun that one might expect during university years. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In any case, when I talk to computer scientists and law students or political science students at Stanford, they all feel a big responsibility in terms of doing something that is a positive contribution to society. I think younger people tend to be more idealistic. So that gives me hope. But there's also a harsh reality. And this has to do, again, with the relationship between the private sector and the public sector, which is that if you have student loans that most students have in the United States of, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, then a salary in the public sector will never come even close to what they can earn when they go to some of the big Silicon Valley successes. And this leads me to a broader concern for society and democratic governments, which is how do they compete when it comes to talent, when it comes to compute, when it comes to access to data, and when it comes to creating an ecosystem in which the most interesting innovations can be created. I think the asymmetry between the private sector and the public, I know that universities may struggle with this as well, is an issue of concern. And I hope that we can have some political focus on that aspect of digitization as well. Yeah.
What's your take on this subject?
What would be your answer? These are very interesting and intriguing questions. How can the public sector compete? But what would be your answer?
Well, I don't want to state the obvious, but I do think that European cooperation and also investment of public resources are two obvious paths where there can be a bigger impact, also of scaling of, for example, pooling research data and pooling capabilities, which would be helpful. But I also believe that the public interest really deserves defending and building. And so it's entirely justified to spend public resources, and maybe a new space for that will open up in light of the fallout of the pandemic, because job creation, investment programs may be needed in order to overcome this challenging moment, which I fully agree with your introductory remarks, should not only be an agenda of sort of repairing, but also an agenda of renewing.
Tim?
Yes, we try and to incorporate ethical aspects in the development of technology. But you talk about the democratic values. Do you think that it is important, that it is possible to embed those values in new technology? Or how do you see that?
Well, one of my observations is that there is almost no consideration of the impact on democracy on the part of engineers. And I don't think it's ill intention. I just think it's a matter of living really in parallel universes. And ethics are probably always a good lens to look through, whether you're developing software or teaching children. But it's also oftentimes a multi-interpretable set of principles. If you read the ethics guidelines of the Chinese government when dealing with AI, you may recognize, 95%, even if the context is most decisive in terms of, what those ethical principles amount to for the people involved. So I'm a bigger fan of going back to rule of law principles to actually anchor agreements and rules in regulations that are enforceable and that people are accountable. And I do think that the next phase in considering the context within which technology is used will have to see engineers and lawyers and other experts of the law, of the political system, sit together so that indeed the design can appreciate the context, not only in the best possible scenario, but also in the worst possible scenario, and have more safeguards for people's rights and freedoms. And given how much pressure democracy is under, I think we owe it to ourselves to dedicate more protection and attention to it.
And we talked about the difference between the US and the EU. Well, you talked about it when you talked about the universities and the students and the loans. If you look at the theme of this week, the resilience, and you look at the difference between the US and the EU, how would you state that in words?
Well, the positive aspects of EU thinking here are that public values, democracy, the rule of law are the foundational principles upon which regulatory initiatives are taken. So I think the positioning of the EU is a very good one. The reality, which makes it fragile, is that it's very dependent on technologies coming from elsewhere and that it lags strong cooperation to assess, for example, national security concerns in coordinated fashion. I can give you one example. The discussion about 5G and Huawei that a lot of people have probably followed. Is it safe to have Chinese network infrastructure in our society? And while there is a digital single market, so basically a level playing field for doing business in the EU, there are 27 different governments of 27 member states that can have their own threat assessment of whether or not there's a risk posed by bringing these technologies into the EU. And this is a friction of fragmentation that must be overcome. And in this case, an ad hoc toolbox was developed. It took about a year. But I think that kind of time to deal with these very pressing issues at the intersection of geopolitics and technology, of which we'll see many, many more, needs to be handled more swiftly and more unitedly.
Thank you very much for this moment, Marietje. Thank you again, Marietje Schaken. Because we're going to go, it was interesting, I think.
Very interesting. Yeah. Lots to talk about.
Absolutely, yeah.
And work to do, by the way.
that also, yeah. Now let us have a look at the resilience of current students here at your university, Tim, because obviously it's not easy being a student in this COVID time. Marietje mentioned it as well. Imagine being a, starting student here in this year. It's
especially the fresh students. For them it's dramatic, of course. They don't know what a university is. They don't know Delft. So that they're really new and they're sitting there behind their screens. Yeah. So it's a drama.
Yeah. So
I feel sorry for them.
Me too. Yeah. But also it shows us, because a lot of things are going on here. The typical TU Delft mentality and the resilience of Delft engineers, because there have been a lot of initiatives, people have told me, and I want to show you one. This is capital S. This is one of the combos of the Delftse Studenten Jazzvereniging Groover. They're making music together with each other, but then online. It is possible. So let's have a look. This is a performance with a spot-on title in times like these, in times of Corona. Everybody needs somebody.
So glad to see all of you loving people here tonight, and I especially would want to welcome all the past members of Soap and Capital Heads who have chosen to join us here from the beautiful, beautiful rooms in this beautiful, beautiful quarantine. I hope you all enjoy the show, and please, people, remember that it doesn't matter who you are or what you do to live, drive, and survive. There are some things that make us all the same. You, me, them, everybody. Everybody.
Well, yeah. Okay, well. So that was capital S, one of the combos of the Delftse Studentenjazzvereniging Groover. Okay, our next guest here at the virtual table is Top Woman of the Year 2019. Her name is Rianne Letchert. She's a colleague of Tim. She's the Rector Magnificus of the Maastricht University, and she has been so since 2016. Upon taking office, she was the youngest female Rector Magnificus in the Netherlands ever. And this is not surprising because she's a great advocate of change. In this week of resilience, we mainly ask ourselves whether society is agile enough, but how about universities? Are they agile enough, Tim? What do you think?
I'm not sure. Let's listen to Rianne first.
How do universities change along with the challenges they face? We ask Rianne Letchert. Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and congratulations, Tim.
Thank you, Rianne.
This week and actually today. Well, I would definitely say that universities have shown to be quite flexible and adaptable to all the changes that we had to go through since the first lockdown, going to online education immediately and trying to professionalize that. From the start, it was emergency remote education, but soon our staff started to also improve quality of online education and blended forms of education once we were able to open up our campuses again. And that you should understand, without any training, without often having the proper technical facilities, working from home like I'm doing, and with children in the first lockdown and also in this period today, walking around you, and that's really not always so convenient. So I think universities are absolutely resilient, not only the staff but also the students, because as Tim rightly said, if you're a first-year student and you really have different expectations and you have to just adjust and adapt to what is being offered. So I would say yes to your question. But I also have concerns, of course, because what you also see is that students are getting more and more lonely. in their student rooms or maybe
Yeah.
with their parents, not having any social interaction. And education is more than gathering knowledge. It's also about getting to know yourself. And that aspect is really lost. And also our staff, I must say. Their work pressure has been enormous since the first lockdown. And so Tim and I and all the other 12 rectors are quite concerned as well. At the same time, being proud of what we see, but the concern is increasing every day.
Yeah. The work pressure for the rectors itself is also increasing, I
That's
guess.
always high.
That's always, yeah, yeah. Throughout the week here, Rianne, we have seen examples of how technology and science can contribute to a resilient society. But let's have a look at the universities themselves. Are they, well, agile enough?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And what you've seen also, I will give you an example with regard to research, where what you've seen is when when COVID hit Europe, very soon, and even also a little bit before, scientists would start collaborating much quicker, sharing their preliminary research results, starting networks. Of course, we got used to Zooming. I never did this. Maybe not the quickest in these things, but now everyone is doing it. And also researchers and scientists are sharing in order to try to find a solution for this COVID crisis. So in that sense also, we've learned a lot. And I think we also must see how we can maintain the lessons that we've learned, both with regard to education, with the blended education forms that we're now experimenting with, but also in the field of research. Not sit on your results until you have your first publication, but see if we can have this whole open science movement that is now growing also for the future.
Yeah, yeah. One of examples is also a scientific congress on transport engineering in Texas, I've been told, that was done entirely online because of the COVID crisis.
Yeah, I cannot imagine us returning to a situation where we fly all over the globe just for a conference or for BSD defense and so on. So that will really change.
Yeah. So how do you think the COVID crisis, Rianne, will contribute to academic resilience?
How it will contribute to, well, I think that our behavior has changed.
Yeah.
And for those of us who were reluctant to, for instance, delve into all the technical digital opportunities, now you had to do it. Mm-hmm. And that will remain. And as Tim is saying, with regard to traveling, I will not go for a conference anymore. That is absolutely, it has to be absolutely necessary, but even traveling, commuting from Maastricht to The Hague, I would do that a few times a week. And of course I miss it now. I would have loved to be in Delft actually today. That was really something that we hoped for, but I won't go anymore for a meeting of 2 hours. I would tell the partners, well, let's have a Zoom. And let's have a Zoom was a sentence I didn't even know. Yeah. So in that sense, we will have more flexibility in our agendas, having also more room to plan. Yeah. And I think that will definitely stay also for the future. And it will have positive effects on climate, if we're not driving, flying all over the place all the time. And that is there to stay, absolutely.
But also you'll miss something, because I talked to somebody of ASML yesterday, Jos Benschop, and he said the most important thing in a company, if you look at innovation, is the coffee machine. That's where the most important conversations take place, people meeting each other, talking about the things they are occupied with. If you only Zoom with your colleagues, you missed that moment, of course.
Yeah, but that's why you say if you only Zoom, I would never go for that kind of scenario. But it's a matter of balance. It's a matter of trying to plan in a way that you still have social interaction on the workplace, same for students, of course, and be able to plan a little bit also around your home situation. That was never really possible for academics, by the way, much more flexible than for support staff. But we're, for instance, in Maastricht are now developing a policy, Future Work at UM, which has many more components of facilitating working at home. We would never have done that if we were not in this situation, because staff also indicates that they would like to preserve certain aspects of working the way we do now. But of course, everything in balance, because you need to see your colleagues, especially also your newer colleagues. You learn on the job. If you're only sitting at home on your own, you will miss those elements. Yeah. But it will be a mixture. Yeah. I really believe that it will remain a mixture.
It will be hybrid, yeah. What do you think, Tim?
I fully agree, absolutely. Yeah. But I don't know what the final balance will be. We have to see.
Yeah, yeah. If the theme of resilience in the COVID crisis has made anything clear, is that we cannot do it alone, also in the scientific world. I mean, the power of cooperation, or the need for cooperation is more explicit than ever. But I was talking to some people and they told me, well, the academic reward system is basically, it's very much geared towards individual rewards. If you only look at the many individual grants, for example. What do you think about that, Rihanna?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And I've heard Marietje saying resilience needs democracy. Tim says resilience needs technology. I would say resilience needs acknowledgement. And we're trying to do that by setting up, or we're working on it actually already for 1.5 years, a program regarding recognition and reward of our academic staff, which is aiming to diversify career paths. So not only focusing on how good you are in the research domain, but also how good are you in generating impact, how good are you in doing your teaching, and not having to do that, by the way, all in an excellent way, but you will have different career paths. And to answer your question, also to be able to appreciate what you do towards the objectives of a team. And I will not only call it team science, because not everyone works in a lab where you jointly work on a certain research objective, but also if you work in a team department where you do teaching, where you have management obligations, where you do research, you want to generate impact. So you have these team objectives, and the way that you contribute to those team objectives should also be acknowledged in your career. So that team spirit and not only competition, because we have quite a competitive system. There, again, it's about balance. Yeah. So how do you make sure that you still want to do something for someone else in your team and not only look at your own career?
Okay.
Rihanna is really the leading figure in trying to establish a new rewarding system for scientists. But how about the outside world, Rihanna? How can we change, well, the people out there, the Americans and so on? Because our scientists go all over the globe and there they still have their own way of measuring quality.
Well, I must say that we are more and more invited, and that's also the positive thing maybe of COVID, because now it's possible, by different countries in Europe and even Asia, where they want us to talk about our program, but also where I see, for instance, in Scandinavia, that some universities are much, much farther ahead than we are. So we're not the only one that is doing this. We're also working closely with the organization that unites the European universities, that's the European University Association. So there are different developments that show that also other countries are interested, and not only the institutional framework, but also, for instance, the Global Young Academy and the Young Academy of Europe. That's the generation where we're doing this for. So if they walk along with us, that will help. That will definitely help. So I'm not so concerned there, Tim. It just takes some time to follow the Dutch.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
Be a bit patient, yeah. And today, obviously, we look mainly at the research side of university. But if we look at the educational task of a university, how do you, we talked about the current generation here with Tim, but how do you educate the current generation to play a crucial role in creating and sustaining a resilient society?
Yeah, but I think that's part also of our program, because if we are going to enable career paths for our younger staff, that they can also become, for instance, a full professor because they are innovating their education, they really are role models also in education. Now that is very difficult. You really have to be very good in your research and then you can make those steps. But now we want to really give emphasis and put also our teachers in the spotlight. And I think that will also create lots of new teacher profiles that will help in what you are just sketching as an important step towards the future. So I'm not so concerned there.
No.
I'm not sure how Tim is viewing that.
No, I absolutely agree. Perhaps, like I said before, well, my generation, I'm much older than you, has to take a step back and leave it to the younger generation, because they're really working in the right direction and they have the right motivation.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I'm curious about the background, Rihanna. What are we looking at behind you? What is that?
Yeah.
Everyone asks me that. I should start a bit.
That's the intention.
It's a painting, but then on fabric.
Ah, okay. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Thank you so much for joining us, Rianne from
you,
Maastricht.
wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Tim, yeah, it was, we started with it was a once in a lifetime Dies Natalis, I
hopefully,
guess.
Hopefully.
Yeah, let's hope the 180th will be, well,
back
normal,
on campus,
standard again.
Absolutely, and shaking hands. Will we be shaking hands again? I'm not sure.
I don't know, yeah, maybe
Hopefully.
waving from 1.5 meters. Yeah.
No.
It was a privilege to be here with you. I think you have some last words for
Thank
us,
you
right?
very much, Artjes. Well, we can have a toast.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Here we have the champagne. Thank you.
And Rianne and Marietje, do you also have your yeah, you see, they have their champagne as well.
There you go.
Because, okay, let's have a second. Oh,
yeah.
A big box, Marietje.
Yeah. We're going to do the toast from afar. Yeah.
Yes, to everybody out there, thank you very much for all your energy and all your achievements during the past very bleak year, up to a much better year. Happy birthday to all of us.
Happy birthday to all of you. Cheers.
To us.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Rianne and everybody out there. Cheers. And I think we can treat you to another, well, treat by group. Let's listen to them to end in a festive mood. Yeah, here they are.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear TU Delft. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear TU Delft. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.